Hi, my name is Rosiev. I'll be discussing the ethical drug dealing pushing prescription for profit, where we'll be looking at the ethics behind the pricing in drugs of pharmaceutical companies in the perspective of drug companies, patients, and the government's role in this. So in 2014, Radiolab released an episode, a podcast called How Much Would You Pay for a Year of Life? In this podcast, it discussed a drug called Zaltrap that was proven to extend the life of cancer patients by an average of 42 days. However, this was at the cost of $30,000 in a 3-month course. Completely infuriated by this, Memorial Sloan Kettering doctors in New York City decided to boycott this drug and released an article in the newspaper discussing how unethical these prices were. In response to this, Zaltrap decided to decrease their price by 50% of their original cost, which makes us question how much the drug actually was worth. And makes us question what the ethical decision making behind all of this was. And ethics is defined as a set of moral principles or a theory or system of moral values. So everybody grows up with different morals. Some people have different types of different ethics and moral principles. And it's very clear that the ethics behind drug companies and the ethics of patients and doctors seem to be very different. So we're going to go and discuss that a little bit. So where is the price justification according to Big Pharma? So Big Pharma is the pharmaceutical industries. They state that when pricing a drug, they ask a couple questions. How unique is the drug? What's the current competition? What does the drug offer? What's the current cost of treating the disease or illness that the drug targets? And does it decrease time in a hospital or hospital procedures? Big Pharma also argues that research and development costs a lot of money, and that's why they need to keep their prices high. So a study from the Tufts Center of Drug Development estimated the cost of research and development to be $2.6 billion. This was in 2014, and since then, a lot of articles and studies have shown this to be completely inaccurate. They actually show that the actual cost is about 5 to 10% of this figure. Regardless, that's still a lot of money to invest in a research and development. So the question still remains, does that justify the high prices for these drugs? Big Pharma's other argument is that reimbursement and wholesale prices force them to keep their drug prices high. So wholesalers ask for a discounted price, and there seems to always be a lower price when it comes to reimbursement. And there's often pushback from insurers, policymakers, physicians, and patients that make Big Pharma lose profit in several different areas. But what's the patient perspective? So a lot of articles, as stated before, have shown that drug companies release inaccurate information, as shown by the Tufts study. It also shows that there are a lot of biased opinions. So a lot of these studies are funded by the drug companies. So they release these figures to make them look better and make them or justify the higher costs. Articles have been released about what should go behind or what should be steps to ethical pricing. So some articles that were released show 5 steps to ethical pricing should include: the price should be paid voluntarily. There should be ample information about the product. The seller cannot exploit the buyer's essential need. The price must be justified, and the exchange must present equal access to goods, regardless of ability to cover costs. Now we see that very often in pharmaceutical industries and pricing, that number 3 and 4 don't always line up with the prices that they're releasing. And this is very obvious last year in 2016 with the EpiPen price hike. So in 2011, the EpiPen cost was about $165. And in 2015, the cost was $600. There was no competition. There was nothing that really showed the reason for this price hike, which violates that 4th step to ethical pricing. The price was not justified. And what drug companies, and especially in this situation, what they usually do and have done is they'll go to physicians and negotiate prices. They'll discuss the reason for the small differences that they claim to be huge differences when it comes to one price to another, and they will show that their higher priced one is a better product when that is not true. They'll exploit the buyer's essential needs by marketing that these patients need these drugs and they're life-saving drugs. So some of the real reasons for price hikes, according to some articles, is that there are no price controls. There are lengthy patents, there are limited competition, small markets, development and production costs, and fewer generic drugs. And a lot of this has to do with the government's role. So the government does not have any law to control prices. anything that they've tried to implement, such as the Affordable Care Act, implemented something called the Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute, which was created to conduct studies to compare two or more existing treatments. And since its enactment, it has not yet released any type of information, although there's a bunch of money that has gone into it. Government is allowing monopolies. So there are patents that last almost 10 to 20 years sometimes and can be extended. So in those years, no other drug company can create a drug like this, like the one that is being patented, which limits the competition and makes the market smaller. And government has no role in stopping this. And in 2003, by the Medicare drug benefit of 2003, the government put this law into place that allowed or didn't allow Medicare to negotiate prices with drug companies, which is completely unheard of in any other country. In other countries, insurers, policy holders, and insurance companies are allowed to negotiate prices. With this enactment in 2003, Medicare was not allowed to negotiate any prices, allowing the prices to still stay high. So what's the conclusion? Drug prices are high and they are not justified by drug expenses. Life-saving drugs should be affordable and accessible. I think that is something, regardless of what morals you have and what ethics you stand behind, I think everyone can agree that if somebody needs a drug, it should be accessible and affordable to that person. And the government should have more of a role in big pharma. So not only should they be creating laws, they should actually be enforcing these laws and should have a role in helping to decrease the prices of these drugs. Thank you and have a great day.